This is Garis, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 296, entitled Wesley College Plans to Discriminate Against Boys. Description. Now that I'm starting to settle into my new life in Melbourne, Australia, I have the mental energy to reboot my masculist activities. My masculist talents were wasted in the Chinese political shithole, but in Melbourne I'm in my own linguistic group and my childhood culture, so have immediate access to the people and the mentality. I'm now starting a media campaign to bring masculist thinking to Australia. This flyer is a letter to the editor type comment or article on a proposal by the headmistress of my old school, where I spent 11 years of my boyhood, from 2nd grade to 6th form or 12th grade. She wants to impose a girl quota on her school and went with her lawyer to a tribunal hearing to get an exemption from the anti-discrimination law that exists in the state I live in, Victoria, Australia. I was present at that hearing, presenting the masculist side, telling the presiding judge, female of course, that the headmistress's girl quota would discriminate against boys because boys have superior genetically based abilities, so that the top scoring boys who would be denied a slot in her expensive elite school would have superior abilities, that is, be more meritocratic than the bottom scoring girls who would get a slot. This is discriminatory and should be illegal, but since, I'm getting the impression, Australia is as gynocentric and feminazi infested as the US, the headmistress will probably get her way at the expense of boys. I will use this letter to approach the newspapers and magazines, that is, the print and e-zine media in Australia, trying to get a masculist toehold to launch a masculist consciousness in this backwater part of the world that has been so intellectually colonized by America's overwhelming soft power. In brackets, Australia's population is so tiny that it doesn't produce many sages to have much intellectual impact on the much bigger world. And now the flyer itself. Just a minute, I have to recenter it, make it a bit bigger. I have a much bigger screen now, 43-inch 4K by Philips. Okay. Wesley College plans to discriminate against boys. Dr. Helen Drennan, that's D-R-E-N-N, Drennan, Dr. Helen Drennan, headmistress of Wesley College, the same school I spent 11 years of my boyhood at, a well-known public, actually private, fee-paying school in Melbourne, is not happy with the 4 boys to 3 girls gender ratio of pupils at her school. On September 3rd, 2018, she and her lawyer, an incongruous female figure in a man's pants, a man's crew cut, and wearing lipstick, requested in a tribunal hearing at King Street in Melbourne's CBD, that's commercial business district, in other words downtown, at the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, VCAT, to allow her school to favour acceptance of girls applying to her school, to give girls more scholarships than boys, to advertise preferentially for girls, etc., to increase the gender ratio to 50-50. In other words, what Dr. Drennan wants is a girl quota. Dr. Drennan wants her school to be given an exemption from the Victorian anti-discrimination law that normally forbids such discrimination on the basis of gender. I was the only male in the room When I was asked, "Whom do you represent?" I answered, "Males, the other half of the population." I assume, in brackets, I didn't ask her, perhaps I should have, that Dr. Drennan genuinely believes that girls are equally capable as boys, so that imposing a girl quota on her school would be perfectly just to both sexes in terms of equality of opportunity and meritocratic fairness. I too would agree with Dr. Drennan's aim to create a girl quota for her school if, and it's a big if, girls had the same average IQ as boys, had the same IQ variance, that's a measure of how spread out IQ scores are over a whole population, had the same testosterone levels, hence motivational levels, and had the same average brain size with the same number of neurons as boys. Unfortunately for her, none of the above criteria are true. So from my masculist scientist point of view, I coined the term masculist in the early 70s and was a PhD full research professor in artificial intelligence before retirement. Dr. Drennan's girl quota request will be discriminatory against boys and therefore is illegal. Why do I think girls are intellectually, genetically inferior to boys on average? Because that is what the scientific evidence shows. For example, 1. Boys have an average IQ superiority over girls by 4 IQ points. Google or YouTube Prof. Rushton, that's R-U-S-H-T-O-N, or Prof. Lynn, L-Y-N-N, on this for details. 2. Women are hypergamous, that is, a woman will try to mate with as superior a male as she can attract, thus getting superior DNA for her kids, who will then have DNA superior to hers. Women evolved with this hypergamous instinct, which is good for the species, but there are constraints on how superior a man can be that a woman can aim for. Research shows that if the IQ difference within a couple is more than 5 points, the relationship fails. So the above 4 IQ points superiority of the average male IQ above the average female IQ is consistent with that 5 IQ points constraint. 3. Males have a 10% larger IQ variance than females. That is, males' IQ scores are more spread out over the whole population, millions of people, so that the morons and the genii are males. So given that the genii are males, it's not surprising that men have won 99% of the science Nobel Prizes, and women have won a piddly 1%. The genii are males. So it's men who invent and build whole cultures, and it's women who parasite off them. In brackets, that is, women parasite off both the men and the cultures. 4. Men's testosterone levels are much higher than women's, so men are much more aggressive, more ambitious, more dogged, more persistent at finishing difficult tasks, so have a greatly superior track record of achievement over women. Women are more wishy-washy and give up more easily when the going gets tough. Paraphrasing the expression, quote, "When the going gets tough, the tough get going, but less so for women due to lower testosterone levels." End quote. 5. Probably the most damning fact against women, that a man, in brackets, who, for example, gets tired of the arrogance of some feminazi princess, close bracket, can hurl at her is that, quote, "Women's brains on average are 10% smaller than men's brains. Google it." This is consistent with the fact of female hypergamy. Women sexually selected men who were taller, bigger, stronger, fiercer, and smarter than them to provide protection against big, strong, fierce men from enemy tribes who might kill her in intertribal wars. Smarter men made better hunters and thus provided her and her babies with more scarce male-hunted meat in times of starvation. 10% fewer neurons in the female brain is a lot. That's like taking an ice cream scoop out of the male brain. That is, 10 billion fewer neurons, 10% less neural processing capacity. So it's not surprising that women don't invent much, don't build much, don't create much. Men are smarter than women because women sexually selected men over several million years who had these superiorities. The above is what science says. So what are their consequences for Dr. Drennan's girl quota? Let's assume Dr. Drennan gets her way. That is, she gets her girl quota for her school. What impact will that have on boys? I think it's clear that it will discriminate against some boys, that it will be anti-meritocratic because the bottom scoring girls who will be given a slot in her elite expensive school will be less able, that is, less meritocratic, than the top scoring boys who will not be given a slot. Thus, those superior boys who are denied a slot will be discriminated against, and this should be illegal. When it came to my turn to speak at the above tribunal hearing, I mentioned the above, as well as saying, by way of analogy, that the US tried creating a blacks quota that badly backfired and was later quietly dropped. In the US, the average IQ of black Americans is about 85, compared to the white 100. Those bottom-scoring blacks who were given a slot at the elite colleges in the US due to the black quota became the butts of strong resentment against them from whites and yellows who told these blacks, quote, "You're too stupid to be here at this elite school. You're only here because of the black quota. You're taking the slot of a smarter white or Asian student who should have your slot because she is smarter than you." End quote. The social and moral pressure against these quoted blacks was so heavy that these blacks themselves asked their representative organisations to stop the black quota, which is what happened. The elite colleges in the US are now disproportionately filled with Asians and Ashkenazi Jews, because these two groups have higher average IQs than blacks or whites. And in parentheses, the average IQ of Ashkenazi Jews in the US is a whopping 115, and for Asian 105, compared to the average white IQ of 100. If the black quota idea failed in the US, why would Dr. Helen Drennan's girl quota proposal fare any better? Question mark. A girl quota is discriminatory against boys, giving boys genetic superiority over girls, and therefore should be thrown out of court as illegal, because it discriminates on the basis of gender, which is what the original legislation of equal opportunities for both genders was originally designed to prevent. At best, Dr. Helen Drennan is poorly informed on the scientific basis for differences in abilities between boys and girls, or at worst, she is merely another misandrous gynocrat, giving girls privileges for princesses. Either way, we masculists are fed up with such discrimination against males and are increasingly putting our male foot down, with a growing anger and bitterness. So feminists, be warned, we men are smarter than women and a hell of a lot more aggressive. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. And a comment in brackets. Contains links to 300 YouTube masculist essays/videos. Ciao.